Welcome to The Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs that shook Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames. This week, the greater the bomb, the bigger the qualms. This is Argylle. Welcome to The Blast Zone.
Welcome to The Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
I am Jon Drake, in-house film critic of my Letterboxd account.
And I'm Ian Dukes. I'm a person with thoughts and feelings, and some of them are about movies.
Movies like Argylle, which we'll be talking about today. But before we get into that, Ian, how are you doing this week?
Well, as I may have hinted at in past episodes, I spent my entire holiday season, starting in October, fattening myself up on Reese's holiday-themed chocolates.
It's true. So it's a running theme of the show.
And as you know, I always bought them at reduced sale prices, but it turns out they still come with full calories. So this week I took a look in the mirror, literally, and I said, it's time to change my ways, starting with a new eating plan, which I'm kicking off this weekend with a delivery of pre-made healthy meals, which I also purchased at a discount because you know I love a deal. And I'm starting my workouts up again as well. So I'm hoping that I can get both lighter and stronger at the same time. If nothing else, just so it's easier to drag myself out of bed, pick myself off the floor, that kind of thing. So we'll see how it goes. Wish me luck.
Now, lots of podcasts seem to advertise for these meal delivery systems. Were you able to swing a sponsorship for us?
I neglected to do that. I got a promo code for myself, and that's all I looked out for. Maybe when they hear me talking about it, once I shed the pounds and become ripped and gorgeous, they'll want to...
You can't become gorgeous since you already are.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, don't say the name of the company until you've gotten the meals and vouch that they taste good.
Yes.
Now, is this a microwavable meal delivery, or is this like you get the ingredients and you cook yourself a meal?
I didn't trust myself to have the energy to cook the meal, so I didn't get the meal prep kind. I got the finished meals that I just heat up.
Even those have seemingly gotten a lot better, though, in the last 10 years from what I've seen.
I'm hoping so. We'll see. I'll report back.
I hope so, too, for your sake.
I hope it's all edible.
Yeah, I'm going in a very different direction than you. Tomorrow, I am having some friends and family over to my house for a nacho competition.
Oh, wow.
If you know me, I'm the nacho man.
Sure.
John D. Savage. Every time my friends come over, I make one or two types of nachos. I've really enjoyed turning various sandwiches into nachos, like a Italian beef nacho or a Cuban sandwich nacho or a chicken parm nacho. But
oh my gosh.
This time they said, we don't want you to do all the cooking. My friends Lori and Alana are going to be preparing their own nachos. I don't know what they'll be putting in them. My wife Jamie will be making cannoli nachos for dessert.
Damn.
And I'm doing mojo pork nachos. Nice Cuban roast pork that's marinating right now in my garage fridge.
That sounds insane.
Yeah, I'm very excited. But whereas you are starting to alter your food intake to get healthier and lighter, I am trying to die of a heart attack.
Now, those don't sound like killer nachos. I mean, they sound killer, but I think you'll only come back stronger after eating that.
That's true. I don't know what they have in store for me, but I'm sure it's not anything too crazy. There's some place by me that was doing pierogies as the chips. They're called Polish nachos, and that's something that'll kill you.
That sounds amazing, though.
It does sound so good. I didn't try it, but it looked pretty bomb. Before we get into show and tell, I just wanted to take some time at the top of the episode to let our listeners know we are looking to do another mailbag episode. Feel free to shoot us an email, blastzonepod@gmail.com, with your question for the episode, or you can send it over DMs on Twitter or Blue Sky, BlastZonePod on both. And hopefully sometime in February, we'll be able to put that together.
Yeah, all kind of questions are welcome. Opinions, hypotheticals.
Favorite movies, least favorite movies, movie watching rituals and habits and experiences.
Ask us anything, as they say.
Blast us anything, more like.
That's right. That's what we say.
With that out of the way, Ian, why don't you tell the listeners something you watched this week that you thought would be fun to share with them?
I watched a movie called Emilia Perez, which is a challenging movie just in what it's trying to be. It happens to be a gritty drama about drug cartel violence in Mexico. That's also about a character who's reckoning with their gender identity. That's also a full-on musical. It was certainly a bold choice by the filmmakers to mash these themes and genres together. Many people are saying that it was a bad choice and that it wasn't done with the kind of thoughtfulness that it should have had. The organization GLAAD called it a step backward for trans representation, which is not very favorable.
Is that the thought police coming to get you for talking about this movie?
Can you hear the sirens closing in? Yeah, that's what happens in Hollywood when you express certain opinions. No, they're just cruising right on by to the next catastrophic wildfire. Talking about this movie, other people have said it represents Mexico poorly.
That's been the take I've seen primarily from people.
Yeah, that it's treating it too lightly with simplistic takes on some issues that are quite serious for Mexico and its people. And I took all that in, despite all those criticisms, which I totally get, and I think most of them are quite reasonable and understandable. I was nevertheless entertained by this movie. I enjoyed all three of its stars, Zoe Saldana, Carla Sofia Gascon, and Selena Gomez. It's a very stylish movie. It's visually very appealing. And I even liked the musical numbers, which I always go into with a little bit of trepidation. And people may have heard recently the movie won 4 Golden Globes. So that's making it a pretty strong contender going into the Oscars. And so both the praise and the criticism of this movie are likely to extend on another couple months here. I did like it. It made me feel feelings. And so for that reason, I recommend it. But I also recommend engaging with the criticisms so you can at least think about the issues that it touches on and judge for yourself how it handled it and what to take away from it.
Yeah, it's a French director who I think a lot of the criticism is that he didn't take any time to entrench himself in Mexican culture before making the movie. So he got a lot of things wrong, apparently.
And not only did he not spend the time, but when he was asked about it, he was quite flippant about it. Like, I don't need to do any research.
Those French, man, they could be kind of spiky, you know?
He's perpetuating a French stereotype by acting that way, frankly.
Sure. Interestingly enough, I just finished a rewatch of Narcos Mexico, which is why I was scooting the other night. If you were following us on Blue Sky,
yeah,
I seen a screenshot from your boy scooting.
A wild scoot appears
on a random Tuesday, scooting on a Tuesday. I did not rewatch Narcos. I just started from season 1 of Narcos Mexico because I'm a sucker for cartel stories, but I feel like I'll be skipping Amelia Perez based on what I've heard. I'm over musicals for the time being.
Yeah, I know you're not exactly looking for new musicals, but I would say this: watch 15 minutes of it just so you get the flavor. And there's no reason that you have to watch more of it. But I think you'll just enjoy seeing the introduction to the setting and the scenario. I'd love to talk to you about that much of the movie.
I can certainly swing that. So what I wanted to bring for show and tell this week is something I've been meaning to watch for a long time now, but in light of the recent events in the city of Los Angeles, I felt like watching something that kind of celebrates LA, a city I've never visited, but am very fond of because I love movies and I love Ian and I love tacos. And I know LA's got great tacos. So I checked out the 2018 drama / comedy / mystery / horror Under the Silver Lake. The official description is a surrealist neo-noir black comedy thriller. It stars Andrew Garfield and Riley Keough. They're neighbors that kind of have a meet cute one night, and she gets spooked by something, makes him leave in a hurry, and then she vanishes without a trace. And the rest of the movie is him trying to piece together where she could be.
Interesting.
And he goes on a very unique odyssey through various familiar LA locales and other places that just feel like they would exist in LA, but probably don't.
Oh.
It veers from very funny to very strange to scary at times. And it's a movie that you can really run away with theories about if you want to take your brain in that direction and be like, what does this mean? What does this mean? And I think all of it means something, but also it's a movie that works very well as just a vibe.
Really?
Yeah. It reminded me a bit of The Big Lebowski, but with a much darker kind of undercurrent to it. And I think part of the reason for that dark undercurrent is it was directed by David Robert Mitchell, who you will know as the director of It Follows.
Oh.
A movie we are both quite fond of. And I believe he's also directing the sequel, They Follow, which should be coming out in 2026, 27. It's a long movie. It's a bit of an odyssey. It's like a descent down the rabbit hole type of story. But especially for you, Ian, I know you don't live in Silver Lake, but they go all over LA in this. And I feel like it would have a special place for Angelino.
Yeah, I've absolutely got to watch that. Based on everything you said, including Silver Lake, I grew up in the neighborhood that's basically adjacent to Silver Lake. Half of my high school friends lived in Silver Lake. So it's part of the old neighborhood for me.
Oh, you got to check it out.
I do have to see it. Somehow I had heard of it, but I was not even sure if it was referring to my Silver Lake. So I'm like, what is this movie? And now I got to see it.
We could talk about it on the podcast if we really wanted to, because it almost ended David Robert Mitchell's career. Cost $8 million, only made 2.1. And I think he had some struggles with the studio to get it released in its final form.
Oh, geez.
It ended up being, wouldn't you know it, 2 hours and 20 minutes long, just like every fucking movie we watch.
It's a curse of movies. They can't cut them off before then.
Speaking of 2 hour and 20 minute long movies that are cursed, let's talk about Argylle.
Yes.
One of the big bombs of 2024, and one that we clocked immediately upon release is like, that's going to be one we're going to have to talk about. But then it almost slipped under my radar because there were so many more high profile bombs throughout the year.
Yeah, it got buried under a pile of bombs, so to speak. I remember hearing that it was bad pretty early on, almost in sync with when I became aware that it existed. And then just from what I saw from the posters and the images and stuff, I'm like, no, that doesn't look good. And people are confirming that bias. And so I just decided to stay away from it until we had to.
Yeah, I have a real lack of goodwill for this movie. And the reason being, a movie like Madam Web or Megalopolis, on paper, those movies all sound bad.
Sure.
You go into it with the lowest of expectations. And I admit, my expectations for Argylle were pretty low only because of the reviews. But on paper, when you look at the cast, the crew, the talent involved, the money spent on it, the kind of ARG style marketing they tried to do for it, it's got a lot going for it. And it absolutely fails in every facet.
I guess that makes it more disappointing. Yeah, you and I both came in with pretty good feelings about the director, Matthew Vaughn. We've certainly been fans of some of his movies. Some of his movies, I say.
That's a way to say it. Yeah, I absolutely love Layer Cake, one of my favorite movies.
You turned me on to that, and I totally got into it too.
Great movie, but I even wrote in my notes, surely this can't be my Matthew from Layer Cake. Like, this can't be the same guy. But no, I feel like it has been a steady, you can call it a decline, I do, towards this, with diminishing returns on every instance of the Kingsman franchise.
Yeah.
Kind of starting at a relative high point for a movie I still didn't like that much, and just getting worse from there. Kick-Ass 2 is a movie that, like, the more distance you get from it, the worse it gets.
Okay. I haven't revisited that. I remember watching it. I remember being somewhat disturbed by its violence, if I'm recalling it correctly. And certainly I've seen some ultra-violence out of Matthew Vaughn since then. But I think I kind of liked Kick-Ass, and I think I kind of liked Kingsman, and I think I watched one of the sequels, and it just kind of washed over me where it made no impression, which might be the direction that he trended towards.
It's weird you say that, though, because Layer Cake and Kick-Ass, those might be his only R-rated movies. So when you describe ultra-violence, like, sure, Kingsman, no, it was Kingsman R-rated? It might have been, actually, the first one.
Which one of them has a church massacre scene?
That's the first one.
That's really brutal.
Yeah, with Colin Firth. That had to be rated R. Yeah, Samuel L. Jackson's big plot is to make everyone in the world's head explode, and he does it, and you see it. So it had to be rated R. I'm sorry, I was mistaken there.
And I saw some people complaining about Argylle that maybe one of the reasons why it didn't work as well is because he tried to do the same things, but he had to erase the blood. So it's like the bloodless version of Matthew Vaughn violence, which maybe sort of loses its reason for being.
I mean, like, well over 100 people get shot in this movie, and there's nary a drop of blood to be seen.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you need blood to have engaging action scenes, but at a certain point, it becomes a little ridiculous. If your movie's going to be this violent, why not just go for it?
Even when certain characters are pushing little handkerchiefs into open chest wounds, there's only the slightest smear of blood that gets on the handkerchief.
That's all you got to do to stop the bleeding of a gunshot wound to the heart.
Yeah.
The vascular passageway.
If you know where the passageway or whatever, is that what it's called?
I think
corridor.
So.
Vascular
corridor. Fuck you. Not you. Fuck you, Matthew Vaughn and Josh Fuchs, who wrote this movie.
Fuchs.
Piece of shit movie. I've got qualms.
Yeah.
John's got qualms. Should we just get into the making of the movie?
Yeah. Why don't we start identifying the parties responsible? Let's hear how this thing happened.
Let's do it. When Argylle was announced in 2021, it sounded like the kind of slick, globe-trotting spy thriller that could reignite director Matthew Vaughn's reputation as a modern action master. Coming off the Kingsman franchise and beloved cult hits like Kick-Ass and Layer Cake, Vaughn said he wanted to craft an ode to 1980s action films, drawing inspiration from Die Hard and Lethal Weapon.
One question, Mr. Vaughn, what the yippee-ki-yay motherfucker are you talking about?
The star-studded cast included Henry Cavill, Bryce Dallas Howard, Sam Rockwell, and Dua Lipa in her acting debut, while Jason Fuchs, who wrote Wonder Woman, penned the script. And if you squinted just right, this could have been Vaughn's audition to direct a James Bond film, but instead of a martini, audiences got a lukewarm glass of piss.
He gave them a license to be ill.
From the beginning, the production of Argylle was surrounded by intrigue. Vaughn promised it would be based on a novel by a mysterious author named Ellie Conway, but as journalists started sniffing around, they couldn't even verify Conway's existence. Social media theories ran wild, with some fans suggesting Conway was a pseudonym for Taylor Swift. Vaughn denied the rumor, though he admitted Swift's love for Scottish fold cats inspired one in the film, prominently featured alongside Bryce Dallas Howard's character.
Also, Taylor Swift's movie Cats inspired Vaughn to use bad CGI.
Adding to the bizarre literary backdrop, authors Tammy Cohen and Terry Hayes later revealed that they had ghostwritten the tie-in book, released just weeks before the film's debut in theaters.
Sounds like they were hoping to kindle some interest.
The production began in August 2021, with Vaughn bringing his trademark style to various European locations. Vaughn cast Henry Cavill as the titular titular Argylle, calling him, quote, born to play James Bond, a role Cavill famously lost to Daniel Craig in Casino Royale for being too young. Vaughn's aim was clear: poach Cavill for his spy franchise before the Bond producers got to him. Before its release, Apple TV had already sunk $200 million into acquiring the film's rights, with reports suggesting the production budget was closer to $120 million. Marketing added another $80 million, split between Universal and Apple, making this a high-stakes gamble, with plans for a prequel and sequels to follow if Argylle succeeded. When the film finally hit theaters on February 2nd, 2024, the reception must have left the filmmakers and studios shaken, not stirred.
They nearly spit out their pastinis.
Rotten Tomatoes clocked in at 33%, with critics panning the film as derivative and lifeless, despite its flashy veneer. Audience polling wasn't much kinder, with a cinema score of C+, suggesting that Vaughn's blend of 1980s nostalgia and modern action didn't stick the landing. Financially, Argylle was a disaster. The film grossed $96.2 million worldwide, far short of its $128 million production cost, and nowhere near enough to recoup the massive marketing spend. Industry insiders estimated losses north of $100 million, making it one of the year's most expensive flops. And while Vaughn has insisted that sequels are still possible, it's hard to imagine any studio clamoring to greenlight another entry in what's already a tarnished franchise.
Not to mention piss-stained.
In the end, Argylle is a case study in the risks of style over substance. Vaughn set out to make a love letter to classic action films, but ended up penning a cautionary tale for overambitious filmmaking. With big names, bigger budgets, and an even bigger marketing campaign, the film is proof that sometimes even the slickest spy can't escape a self-inflicted mission failure.
Man, there's a lot to comment on in there. Where do we start? Maybe with
Let's start with, are you going to say his insistence that this is an ode to 80s action movies?
Yes, his inspiration.
Because what the fuck is he talking about?
What is he thinking? Maybe he started there, but nothing he produced came close to that. How is this like Die Hard?
This is just Kingsman babies. It's just the Kingsman with less blood. It's that exact type of action throughout. And Die Hard and Lethal Weapon, those are pretty grounded movies.
They're a whole different thing. They're about wisecracking heroes who shoot from the hip. And this is about a woman who thinks she's an author. Like if you said he was doing an ode to the Bond films and the Mission Impossible films, sure. Like, okay, yeah. I got you. I see what you're doing there. But whatever kernel of Die Hard and Lethal Weapon he started with must have totally been vaporized, and then they started from scratch.
He's like a guy who's only seen the fourth Die Hard and fourth Lethal Weapon movie and is like, I'm going to make an ode to these because...
Maybe that's it.
I don't know. But that was very bizarre. Yeah, make one of those. I would love to see an homage to 80s action, but we got this, which I'm just going to call Kingsman babies from now on because it's Bloodless Kingsman. Like that exact type of like poppy soundtrack over long drawn out fight sequences. That's like textbook Kingsman.
Yeah, he didn't change his tune there. Like he's still an action director. He loves his set pieces. And you feel like that's the reason why he's making the movie, so he can do these big action scenes that he dreamed up. And you know what? He's actually pretty good at that. And, you know, some of the entertainment value that this movie does retain is in those scenes, even though you and I might disagree about whether we could receive any of that entertainment value by the time those scenes came on screen, because the movie is fatiguing. And by the time you get to the biggest payloads at the end, you're like, I don't want any more of this.
Also, every action scene is, in my opinion at least, significantly worse than the last. It starts at a pretty high point, and we'll talk more about the train sequence. But then I think every big set piece after that is just diminishing returns.
I mean, you can see how he's trying to escalate the premise of each one and the ridiculousness of it, but maybe he just spent too much time. I mean, this movie is long, as we've already mentioned at least once, and it's
already maligned.
Like you feel it. He spends all this time developing various aspects of the story, many of which are superfluous, and even the ones that are necessary are drawn out too much. Like if you're going to be like, I'm just in it for the action, just be in it for the action, and don't try to give us so much of these other movies, which it fails at trying to be.
Yeah, this is a movie that starts itself over again at like the hour plus mark. And I watched this movie 2.5 times, which seems to be my new ritual for movies we cover. It's 2.5. That's the magic number where I feel like I've got a handle on it. But I didn't watch it the whole way through once. And that's rare for me. I know that's kind of how you typically watch movies, is in bite-sized pieces. But I like to at least sit down and watch it the whole way through one time.
Sure.
But I couldn't, because I'd be like, how much time's left? Like 45 minutes? And I'd look and there'd be like an hour and 38 minutes left. I'd be like, what the fuck?
There's so much plot and stuff happening. There's so many twists, and each one is thoroughly explained. And and laid out. And even then, they're confusing and you sort of lose patience with trying to keep them all straight in your head.
They're confusing or they're inconsequential to us. Like a character we've never met is miraculously alive.
Right.
Great. Who gives a fuck? I don't know that person.
Yeah. And speaking of twists, obviously we were going to spoil this, and this movie, a lot of what it's doing and a lot of the decision making is based on the fact that it's very excited that it's holding all these cards. It's sitting on these big twists that's going to dole out to you. And mostly I think we would say they shouldn't have played most of those cards. Like they should have just put most of them on the table, given you one twist, and it just enjoyed the fun of it. But I was kind of the perfect audience going into this because despite the fact that people complained that they saw too much of this trailer, I never saw it, or at least I didn't remember it at all. So I genuinely didn't know a single one of the twists going in, even the ones that the trailer makes obvious. Like the trailer tells you that it's not really a spy movie. It's a movie about a lady who writes spy novels. I thought it was a genuine spy movie when I turned it on. So like I'm watching the first scene. I'm like, this is some spy action, but it's getting kind of ridiculous, isn't it? And then like, yeah, that was on purpose. It hit me after a few minutes. So I was like perfectly primed to absorb this movie on its face value alone. It still didn't make a great impression on me. First watch, I was like, it's okay, but it's overdone and it's too long. And it's even saying I had no impression of it. I thought it was Henry Cavill's movie because his picture was on the poster. He's front and center.
Yeah.
And it's not. And it shouldn't be his film. There should actually be less of him in it. It's a stunt casting. But because, like you said in your monologue, Vaughn was so proud. He's like, oh, I scooped the next James Bond and I've got him in my spy movie. And he's like a joke device in this movie. And that's all he should be. But then Vaughn felt like he had to milk him for more than that.
Even the infamous trailer you're referring to that everyone complained about seeing too much of is more or less that scene with Cavill and Dua Lipa.
Right.
That's how they tried to sell this movie to people. And much to my chagrin, the trailer featured David Bowie's Let's Dance in that scene. And then they changed it to Barry White. Like also the music choice, like there's a lot of dancing in this movie, but none of the music seems to match the types of dancing that they're doing.
Yeah. I wonder if at least some of that, which we'll get to, was product placement.
Don't get me started on that fucking Beatles song.
There's Pepsi bottles inserted into this movie. There's a Beatles song inserted very heavy-handedly into this movie. The particulars like that feel negotiated and not creatively inspired.
The song sucks, by the way.
It's not great.
It's a reason it was unreleased for 50 years. Do you want to start walking through the story? Because John got qualms.
Let's hit it. Ellie Conway, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, is a shy, retiring single woman who is the author of a successful series of spy novels about a dashing fictional secret agent named Argylle, played by Henry Cavill. Ellie lives alone with her cat Alfie, played by CGI. Ellie's mom, played by Catherine O'Hara, is bugging her to rewrite the unsatisfying final chapter of her upcoming 5th novel. So Ellie decides to take a break and go visit her parents. But on the train, she's attacked by a whole bunch of assassins, and she only survives because an annoying passenger named Aiden, played by Sam Rockwell, turns out to be a secret agent. Aiden kills the bad guys and parachutes Ellie and Alfie off the train to safety. Aiden then explains that an evil spy organization called the Division is after her. Mysteriously, Ellie's books seem to mirror real-world spy scenarios, and so the Division is searching for clues that will help them recover the secret master file, which would expose all their agents. Aiden takes Ellie to England, where they search the apartment of a missing super hacker who created the master file. But they're ambushed by Division agents, and they have to fight their way out. Later, Ellie starts to suspect that Aiden isn't really her friend, so she gives him the slip and arranges to meet up with her mom and dad, played by Bryan Cranston. But it turns out the people she thought were her mom and dad are really Division operatives who brainwashed her with false memories. So Aiden has to come and violently rescue her from that situation, too.
All right, let's get right into it. First act of this movie, by the way, the strongest by far, in my opinion.
Okay.
There's a couple reasons for that. Part of it, like I said, is I think the train action scene is good.
Yes.
I think the apartment action scene is also good, but maybe just a little too close to the train action scene where you're already getting that kind of glaze over your eyes from just watching bloodless fights for 20 minutes.
I agree.
I think Bryce Dallas Howard is very convincing as Ellie Conway. That's the kind of role she seems more comfortable in without spoiling what's coming up. And Rockwell is much more charming in this section than when, spoiler alert, he starts revealing the depths of his relationship with Bryce Dallas Howard's character and it becomes a love story. When he's kind of just like an abrasive dick. That's the Sam Rockwell I know and love from the movies.
That's a good point. He's in his element there. He's definitely one of the best things in the movie, and he's able to still keep it light and funny even when the script is not that great. But you're right. When he's in disguise, when he first meets her and he's pulling a fast one on her, that's the best Sam Rockwell in the movie.
Looking like Chris Pine in The Pool Man. Or just Chris Pine when he's not on a movie set. It's just
He's
kind of
got long hair, fishing hat. It's a good look.
Let's reverse back to the intro sequence. First thing I notice about this is Cavill looks like an idiot.
Yes, he certainly does.
They styled him with the dumbest fucking haircut I've ever seen. And they even give that poor haircut to Sam Rockwell later on to drive the point home. They make him dress like a bellhop at a hotel for bodybuilders. Like he's just wearing this like velvet.
Like a narrow jacket is what you call that with the little tab collar.
Yeah.
It looks terrible.
It's a very dumb outfit.
The thing is, for me, part of the reason why it took me a while to realize that was parody was because also it's Henry Cavill, and he's extremely handsome, large, ripped man who's very convincing looking on screen. So it almost didn't register that he was the butt of the joke, which leads to one of my main complaints is that they shouldn't have made him the butt of the joke. After watching this movie twice, I realized they should have played the fictional part straight or spoofed it in a different way. They went halfway towards ridiculous, but not all the way because they needed it to be plausible as the basis for a real spy organization to be interested in these books. So they couldn't be so silly that they didn't make sense in the non-fictional plot, but they should have been serious.
Yeah, the tone of those sequences is too close to the tone of the real world sequences. Like typically when you insert these kind of B plots into a movie that feature other characters, like you change the tone so that it's a break, it's a respite for the audience.
Good point.
It's too close to what's actually happening in the real world in this movie.
Yeah, imagine if the spy stuff was like Jason Bourne, but scarier and darker, or like the darkest parts of contemporary Bond movies, but like even ramping that up to where it's more serious and sinister. And then the real world was like funny Sam Rockwell joking while he kills a bunch of spies.
You might be onto something with that, yeah. And then Cena's going on about his coffee and how you'll be the same temperature as this coffee. Like he's a fussy kind of gentleman, but he's John Cena. So
yeah, and he looks too much like Henry.
What are we to take from that? Yeah, like they're the same guy.
They look too similar. These are supposed to be the duo of the super agent and then his partner, but they both have the same build. I mean, Cena's a little bigger, but Cavill, as you say, is a large man, and they both have spiky flat tops and a dry delivery.
And I think that's just John Cena's hair. Like for no, yeah.
It can't be styled any other way.
It's resistant to other forms of styling. And I know that the movie's being tongue in cheek, but like these guys are both 6'4" and like 280 pounds. They're not blending in anywhere. Like they're terrible spies.
Yeah, it's like 1/3 of the way to Austin Powers, but like it doesn't go far enough that way to be actually silly and funny. And it wouldn't make sense for the Ellie Conway writer character to be writing Austin Powers style fiction, you know? So they couldn't go there, but they still made it like semi-funny. And the concept sits in this in-between zone where it doesn't really make sense in it. You can't process it while you're figuring out the plot because you don't know the whole picture at first, but it leaves you with this unsettled feeling like something is not clicking in this whole movie the whole time.
I'll tell you what did work for me in that whole sequence, though, is Dua Lipa in that gold dress. Ayuga! Maybe the most attractive person in the world. It's almost offensive.
She's very beautiful. Bryce Dallas Howard is also very beautiful in a disarming way, as there's big close-ups on her big blue eyes in this that are, I don't know if they're distracting. They're useful. That's something that obviously a filmmaker can put to good use when he has gorgeous actors to put on screen in close-up.
And hey, Sam Rockwell is no slouch. When he comes out of the shower and he's shaved and cut his hair, somehow he gave himself a haircut that's decent. He's a handsome guy, too. Let's give Sam Rockwell his credit.
I always thought of Sam Rockwell as a very handsome guy. He's showing his age. I can see his age in this more than ever, but
particularly in the Whirlybird angle when you get just a close up on his dumb smiling face.
We'll get to the Whirlybird. Oh no, the Whirlybird kicks off.
Yeah, no, we get this is where we get our first glimpse of the Whirlybird, which comes up several times.
Whirlybird number 1. Yeah,
I think it's 4 of them in the whole movie.
The Whirlybird is a dance for anyone who hasn't seen this movie, and it's Argylle's favorite dance, and it turns out to be Ellie Conway's favorite dance, and it's not a real dance. It's a stupid dance where
it's really not a dance. It's more of a gymnast move.
Yeah, you pick your partner up and straddle them with your face in their
crotch.
In their crotch. They straddle you with your face in their crotch, and you spin around like a whirlybird.
And they spread their legs and spin.
Just spin like it's silly dancing. I mean, that's part of the spoofy stuff. Like it's supposed to be like a serious dance scene where the James Bond guy seduces.
Do you do the Whirlybird?
The evil spy. And then they do the silliest dance ever. So
also, is he drinking a whiskey sour in that scene? What is that drink he takes off the bar?
Something foamy, right? Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, it's got like the egg white foam at the top. I was like, weird choice for a spy.
I know. Another one of the subtle jokes. It's like almost funny and could be funny if you were in on the joke, but you're not quite at that point. There's a lot of that where it's not really hitting. And Henry Cavill is making these funny expressions. So he's chasing Dua Lipa down this hill on a golf cart, crashing through the roofs of this Greek hillside town. And his expressions that he's making while the golf cart is thundering over rooftops is actually really funny because it's kind of disheveled in a way that a super spy shouldn't be, but it's also super subtle.
Yeah.
They're kind of unsatisfying.
And it's so early in the movie, the movie's not silly enough to clue you in on the fact that this is supposed to be ridiculous.
Yeah, you know, like, you don't know. know that subtle expression on his face is supposed to be a laugh line because it's not quite big enough.
Because the parody also, I feel like the parody works in reverse to how it should. I think typically in parody movies, they start off sillier so that you understand the world you're in, but then they try to introduce real stakes as it goes on. So they start to treat it like a real situation with real stakes. Whereas here, the movie starts and it's pretty subtle as far as how silly it is. But then like by the third act, we're ice skating on oil and, you know, like we're fully just gonzo bananas filmmaking. And I think you had to flip those.
Yeah, he didn't quite get the tone right. Like you said, the tone of the two worlds, there's not enough contrast. There's a lot of small decisions that none of them in this movie are terrible deal breakers in themselves, but they add up. They start to pile up quite a bit.
It's like death by a thousand cuts.
Yeah, it brings the movie down. And the next one is like Ellie Conway. So we find out that scene with Henry Cavill didn't really happen. That was the finale of her book. She's doing a book reading. She's the author. And then they spend all this time setting her up. And I go, oh, it's actually not a spy movie parody. It's a comedy about a woman who's dealing with weird stuff in her life. They spend all these scenes setting up her writing career, dramatizing how
she's a workaholic. I am in a relationship, Mom, with my work, she says.
Yeah, she's got all these kind of cliche, obvious things, but they're not relevant. There's a whole scene dramatizing how she tries to write an ending to the book, but her writing comes out too obvious and uninspired. And it's like, this is not a movie about actual difficulties writing the ending of a novel. And yet there's a whole scene dedicated to that.
And this all gets washed away early on in Act 2. And you're like, fuck, what were we doing?
Yeah. She becomes this fish out of water. So I'm like, oh, it's a comedy about a fish out of water, like a normal, relatable, ordinary girl, which Bryce Dallas Howard is good at playing that type of character.
Sure.
And suddenly she's thrust into this crazy spy world, which is kind of fun for a minute, but it also has inconsistencies. The main one that came to me after 2 watches again is she uses her expertise as a writer. And in fact, they rely on that to solve some of the questions of like, what happened to the super hacker? Where did he go? How would we find him? And she's a confident expert on that. She's telling Aiden how things work and what the technology is that he would have used and how to find stuff. But then when guns and fighting come up, she's like, ooh, guns and fighting. I don't know about this. Help. I'm in a world that I don't understand. And like, you wrote those scenes too. Where was your research on combat techniques and various guns and grenades and all this stuff that she should be an expert on just as much as she's an expert on satellites?
Yeah. The movie's picking and choosing for comedic effect. But all this serves to untether the story from any kind of objective reality,
right?
Where you're not sure if any of this matters, if there's any stakes at all.
Yeah, she doesn't have much personality. She doesn't have the personality of either a hard-boiled spy writer or a person who might actually have been a spy.
Perhaps.
And she's just always just doing stuff because it's necessary for the plot.
Yeah. And then when we get to the train fight, we start this recurring motif of Rockwell's character being in an action scene, but from Ellie's point of view, he is Argylle, the Henry Cavill character.
Right.
Which gets even more confusing the further you get into the movie because, spoiler alert, we come to find out that Ellie is Argylle. She's Kyle. But so why isn't she seeing John Cena? Because that's who she based. What's his name?
The buddy's name?
Wyatt.
Wyatt, thank you.
So she based the Wyatt character, the John Cena character, on Aiden. But when Aiden's fighting, she's seeing Argylle.
And like, there's a reason for it. Plot-wise, I could get it because at that point, she doesn't have any clue that she's Argylle. So the first person that she sees acting like a spy, she believes must be Argylle. Because like I think the reason they did that is they didn't want to tip their hand. But it's one of those choices that's made for keeping the twist secret. And it really confuses the movie. It's done pretty deftly, like in the middle of an elaborately choreographed action fight, which Vaughn is good at. Rockwell will keep turning into Cavill and back and forth. And it's cool to see him in midair flip. And it's kind of well done little trick, but it gets tiresome because it's so confusing and not really additive to the story.
Yeah. Speaking of Rockwell fighting, immediately after the train fight, we get the apartment fight, which is good. Maybe a little bit of a step down from the train, which is my theory that every action scene is a little worse.
Okay.
But he can't help himself inserting this kind of madcap comedy into this sequence by trying to coach Ellie into how to stomp on a dude's head to crush his skull. But the whole thing goes on for like 5 minutes.
They really draw out that joke with a lot of like, here's how you do the stomp. stomp. Watch me now. I'm stomping. You remember how to stomp? Let's do the stomp now. It's like, okay, let's drop the stomping because she's not doing it.
To the left now, y'all. Slide to the right.
2 times. It's too much. And even, Sam Rockwell uses up some of his comedic goodwill trying to make that joke land over and over. And again, it's off because that scene needs Ellie to be you're really a fish out of water, really uncomfortable with the idea of actual fighting and killing, which conflicts with the stuff she writes in her books. And then I feel like I'm going to get tiresome doing this, but I've got another plot logic question to ask about the apartment fight, which only became clear after multiple watches when I finally started stitching together all the twists and all the things, is who cleaned up the hacker's apartment. There's a plot point where they make very clear that neither the good guys nor the bad guys knew where that apartment was.
Maybe the landlord.
Oh.
He had to paint over a lot of anarchy signs because this is the most stereotypical hacker of all time. He's just got anarchy logos. Logos? I guess, right?
Is that a logo?
It's not a brand, but
yeah, it seems antithetical, but anarchy does have a strong brand.
Yeah, he's got it painted all over his walls, but it's hiding charges or something. Yeah, there's some bad CGI later when the walls start exploding.
There's some suggestion. I guess I thought that they were suggesting that somebody who was in the know covered up that place. But you're right. It could be just the landlord's attempt to make the place rentable. But this doesn't answer my other question was that character, the Rockwell character, has been stated that he was there. He was in the neighborhood. He was nearby at that statue and he sent Ellie/Rachel to go have that meeting. And then she disappeared. And then she turned up later, washed up on the banks of the river. How did nobody on either side notice that in that same neighborhood where they were all tracking down this stuff, that an apartment freaking exploded? Like, wouldn't that make the news to where somebody in the spy business would be like, we should look into that because we're missing an agent?
Yeah, or even if it doesn't make the news, they're theoretically tuned into the police blotter in these areas that are of note to them. Yeah, I think you might have just found a little bit of a plot hole.
I'm harping, but it's the kind of things that when you're forced to watch the movie 2+ times start to wear on you. We're like, it doesn't even really all make sense when you finally do the hard work of unraveling the threads.
Speaking of wearing on you, I guess this would be the first big twist of the movie, is when we meet Ellie's parents.
Yes.
We find out her dad is actually, what's his name? Director Ritter, played by Bryan Cranston. So we know right away that he's secretly a bad guy, but even there's a double twist hidden in there because we're not sure about Catherine O'Hara's character, who is Ruth, Dr. something or other.
Not Dr. Ruth, though.
No, that'd be an interesting movie. So yeah, we find out that Ellie's quote unquote dad is the big bad of the division because we've seen him shoot Rob Delaney in the head with a shotgun.
Right. Bloodlessly.
But then, we're still not sure if Ellie's mom is in on it or just an unwilling participant. But turns out that no, she is also part of the division and is British. And she's good. Like Catherine she's good in this role, both as the needling, overbearing mother and as the evil doctor. They did mention the Manchurian Candidate. They were like,
they did.
It's real MK Ultra Manchurian Candidate shit that she does, like mind control, brainwashing.
Yeah, she's good as the chief scientist of the division. And I agree also as the mom. She's one of the people who kind of makes her part work.
Cranston, I'm less enthusiastic about, and he's an actor I really like, but I think he's great when he's kind of the bumbling dad and trying to balance that with trying to get the information he needs as Director Ritter.
Right.
But when he drops the veil, I think he's just mugging a little too hard.
I know what you mean. I tend to blame that on the writing. They gave him these scenes where he is an absolute mustache twirling bad guy, right? He's constantly berating his team at the division, standing in his elaborately decorated lounge at the top of their headquarters/control room and yelling at them for failing him once again.
Apologizing for wasting time is more time wasted, or whatever he says.
Yeah.
This is one of his big speeches.
They do kind of fall flat, and he's getting a little sweaty, trying hard to invest them with some real menace. And it's just okay. Like, we get what he's doing, but it doesn't thrill you.
It's not his wheelhouse. Like, we talked about it off mic. I think people saw Breaking Bad and were like, Bryan Cranston, play a great bad guy. And I'm sure he can with the right material. But part of what made Walter White so compelling and unique is that he is this big bad guy. He's a murderer, a drug trafficker, a drug manufacturer, a absolute criminal mastermind. But he's also pathetic throughout, even when he is on top of the criminal world.
Yes.
There's just no nuance to the Ritter character. He's pretty much just a blank slate. Like you said, mustache twirling, really nothing going on except he hates freedom. What's his deal?
Yeah, we don't even know that the director, unlike other very thin Bond villain type of organizations that at least have some stated goal in mind, like their goal in this is just to keep themselves secret, right? They don't have any actual goals in the world.
They're just evil spies. Their goal is to keep on spying.
Keep on spying. Don't blow our cover, man. This is our whole vibe, is just doing evil spy shit. But yeah, I agree. Like, Walter White is scarier because he's pathetic, because we know that he's this sad man, and like it makes it more fucked fucked up, whereas this man is just a one-dimensional Bond villain.
One day we'll talk about Bryan Cranston without having to bring up Walter White, but it is not this day. Was there anything else from this section you wanted to touch on, or should we get into Act 2?
Let's cruise on and see what happens next.
All right. Next, Aiden takes Ellie to France, to the high-tech vineyard of former CIA Deputy Director Alfie Solomon, confusingly played by Samuel L. Jackson. Solomon reveals to Ellie a huge secret. She's not who she thinks she is. Ellie Conway is really CIA agent Rachel Kyle. R. Kyle. Get it? After her mission to get the master file went bad, she woke up in the hospital with total amnesia. That's when Division Director Ritter got to her, implanting new memories that she was a writer and that he was her dad. Ellie still doesn't remember being Rachel, but she has to fake it when Solomon sends her and Aiden to the Arabian Peninsula. There, Ellie must retrieve the master file from a shadowy figure known as the Keeper of Secrets, confusingly played by Sofia Boutella. She gets the file, but when she looks at the roster of Division agents, Ellie is horrified to see herself on the list. Then she and Aiden are captured by the Division and brought to their headquarters aboard an enormous oil tanker. There, Director Ritter confirms a terrible secret. CIA agent Rachel Kyle was secretly evil and working for the Division as a double agent, which is what we just found out in a previous scene. To prove that she now accepts her true reality, Ritter makes Ellie/Rachel threaten Aiden to give up Solomon's location. He argues with her, saying deep down she's good at heart, but she shoots him through the heart. All seems surely lost.
Sure does. We were surely lost with all those twists.
I was surely losing my patience for this fucking movie. All right, let's start with Samuel L. Jackson. Big spoiler alert is that in the end credit scene, because of course this movie's got a stinger, it is revealed, and it's something I just kind of assumed anyway, that this is all taking place in the same universe as the Kingsman.
Okay, yeah.
So, pray tell, why are you casting the dead bad guy from the first Kingsman movie as the former director of the CIA? And also, why are you casting Sofia Boutella, who had a decent-sized role in the first Kingsman, as a completely different character? And what the fuck, man?
I was thankfully not confused by those because I didn't remember that either of them were in it, though I probably should have.
Ignorance truly is bliss.
But yeah, I get your point. I was blissfully ignorant. And if you knew in a movie that is just throwing the twists and secret identities and resurrections from the dead left and right, you might be sitting there wondering, well, is that true about the Samuel L. Jackson character or the Sofia Boutella character?
Yeah. The dead giveaway is that he's not talking in a weirdly exaggerated lisp. Okay. That was the bad guy in the first Kingsman movie, had a very distinctive way of speaking. But also, I think Jackson's kind of bad in this.
Yeah. He should have been more distinctive. He's like a character searching for a hook. And I guess his hook is that he's a big sports fan, but they don't say it. They just show him with a bunch of memorabilia, like watching a Lakers game. And he's trying to bring some energy and like get excited in parts, but you can kind of tell that he doesn't really know what he's supposed to be into or not. So he's just giving this generic delivery that just seems a little bit goofy.
It feels to me like they shot his scenes over a weekend and he wasn't really privy to what was going on with the rest of the cast. So these scenes in France just have a whole different feel to them, and the acting's more grounded, but it gives you whiplash, and Jackson's just out of step with everybody.
Yes, because yeah, in that same set of scenes, Aiden and Ellie/Rachel have to have their authentic coming together, remembering who they are and what they mean to each other. And then yeah, he's just this kind of goofy, overly cheery boss man who's like kind of wasted in the movie.
All right, so wait, now that we know that Ellie is Rachel, I wanted to go back to Act 1 real quick for a scene that I fucking hate.
Okay.
And it's not indicative of a greater issue, or maybe it is. I just want to complain about it. When Sam Rockwell and Ellie are at the safe house and he goes into the shower and is on the phone with Alfie and he's talking very cryptically about like, Ellie Conway needs a bullet in her fucking head and I've had enough. I'm bringing her to you and you just end it. And like none of that dialogue makes any sense for what was really happening. They just had to manufacture something to make her running away seem plausible. And I just thought that was real shitty writing.
Yeah, it made more sense to me the second time. The first time I couldn't even square how the way he said it could have a double entendre. And the second time, like, oh yeah, so he's talking about like
her alter ego that, yeah, he finds annoying.
He's been playing along, telling her that she is this writer and he just needs her help because her writing is so good at predicting the future.
Prescient.
And he's like, you got to just tell her that she's really Rachel. So it does make sense, but it is really jarring.
It makes sense, but it's very clumsy. Especially like the woman you love, you're going to say she needs a bullet in the head because she has memory loss. If you shoot her in the head, guess what? Her alter ego is going to die too.
Isn't that supposed to be metaphorical though? It means the character of Ellie Conway needs a bullet in the head so that Rachel can emerge. But
I understand that's what they were going for. I'm saying it was ham-fisted and bad.
Yeah, it feels fake, even though like obviously I can defend it based on strict script logic grounds. I know what you mean.
Yeah, we're technically in the clear That's like, sure. Is that what you're looking for out of your scripts? Just technically make sense?
That would be enough. That'd be a lot to ask of this script if it even technically made sense.
Should we talk about the keeper?
Keeper of Secrets, very elaborate scene, too elaborate like many of the scenes in this movie. It went on quite a while.
Goes on for fucking ever. We get Whirlybird number 2.
Yes. So they're sort of halfway coming back together. He's admitted that they used to be in a relationship when she remembered that she was Rachel, and now she's maybe halfway remembering that. And so it's the tease. They have to wait for the keeper to invite her in. So while they're waiting, he's like, let's dance. And it's just another excuse to do another Whirlybird.
Yeah. I did take a screenshot of the scene, like the Whirlybird Cam, as I've dubbed it, the Whirly Cam. Because when they're spinning, we don't just get like a wide shot of her straddling him. We also get close-ups of each of their faces. And I took a picture of it and sent it to you. And I was like, this is insane. I should post that in the show notes.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously it's intentionally funny. Like,
yes, but it's almost too much.
In a better movie where we had all our patience and goodwill to give, that probably would have been a hilarious bit. And we'd be like, oh my God, they did the Whirlybird again. It's so silly. But it's just kind of mildly silly to me.
And then we get this kind of showdown between the keeper and still kind of Ellie turning into Rachel, where she manages to convince the keeper that she's really Rachel and not, this is all so fucking stupid. But also, I don't think she was very convincing at all.
We talked about this off air that without insulting our beloved Bryce Dallas Howard, she's not the most powerhouse actor.
No, she's got a wheelhouse that she sticks to more or less. And the Rachel character is well outside of it.
Yeah, which should be fun. I mean, because she spends a lot of time in that ordinary persona of Ellie Conway in the first half of the film. And so it should be fun. And obviously they physically dress her up. They put her in the straight blonde bob and the dark eyeliner. And like they've transformed her physically so that you like really feel how different that is now. But it doesn't really pop. I agree with what you're saying when she's trying to play that character.
She's just got like a wholesomeness to her that works against this kind of no holds barred spy murderer she's supposed to be. And she can't even bring herself to shoot her former boyfriend without coming up with some cockamamie scheme. First of all, somebody emailed her this idea about a 2-inch corridor near the heart where you can shoot someone, and as long as you stop the bleeding, they're fine.
If you picture it, it goes like just over the top of the heart and under this little arch of the aorta or whatever's coming out of there.
Yeah, you got to do like a wanted and curve the bullet.
Yeah, you got to put a little spin on it and it goes through. And all you have to do is like then stick a handkerchief in the hole and that stops the bleeding and the person is fine.
So that's obviously very stupid. And the movie knows it's stupid. And Aiden calls it out as the dumbest thing he's ever heard. And that's all well and good. My issue is a fan wrote this to her and she was just going to make it the ending of one of her books. Like, you're just soliciting endings from your readers now? That's not cool. You get paid for this shit very well, judging by your lake house in Colorado. You're just going to steal ideas from your readers?
And they try to explain that too by her saying, well, it was such a brilliant, genius idea that I had to make an exception. Or
such a brilliant genius. A twist doesn't work if nobody knows what the fuck you're talking about. If you're like, oh, the vascular corridor, of course. What a twist. That doesn't work because no one knows what that is because it's not fucking real.
Right. But in the world of this movie, it is because it actually comes from her real world. And that anonymous fan is no anonymous fan by the end. It's an anonymous main character.
But shouldn't Aiden know about it then? He's also a master spy.
I think maybe the idea is that Kira learned about it after the bullet went through her.
When she didn't die.
She survived. She's like, there's something going on here. I'm going to do some Googling.
So she had to reverse engineer a theory about why she's not dead. She came up with.
Let me go on WebMD and figure out what just happened to me.
Fucking so stupid. And like, you're not absolved because your own characters call out that it's stupid. You wrote it and then you wrote them reacting to it. It's like, don't hurt your own patting yourself on the back there, dickhead.
Yeah, there's a type of bit like that you can get away with calling out the silly thing you just did. This one, it just, clearly they were out of goodwill from you. You had no fucks to give by the end of the second act.
Most of my notes in the third act are just go fuck yourself.
John Lost is cool 2/3 the way through this movie and 2/3 of the way through writing down his thoughts on this movie.
I had to text Ian, like I was adding my notes and I had to take a break.
Yeah.
I was losing my cool. I think this month is just wearing on me. This is our 4th fucking shit ass movie in a row.
Yeah.
And we're not done yet.
No, we've got a silly one, but we'll talk about it at the end.
We usually work in some good movies, but this month has been rough.
The year gifted us with what it had, and we had to work with that.
This is its bounty. Yeah, why don't we take this home as best we can?
Here we come. Surprise, Aiden's not dead. Ellie isn't really evil. She was faking it, and so she intentionally shot the bullet harmlessly through the gap above the heart, known as the vascular corridor. So Aiden breaks out and reunites with Ellie, and the two of them engage in a balletic fight past dozens of division guards with the help of some colorful smoke grenades. Then, the next moment, they're caught in a standoff with a handful of remaining division fighters in a pump room where the floor is covered in slippery crude oil. So Ellie fashions her boots into makeshift ice skates and proceeds to dispatch the bad guys with a stunning figure skating routine. Then she and Aiden kill Ritter with some help from Alfie the cat. Outside on the deck of the tanker, they begin transmitting the master file to Solomon. But Ellie's evil fake mom appears and uses a music box to trigger Ellie's brainwashing. As evil Rachel, she fights with Aiden and almost kills him. And all seems lost until their former CIA teammate Kira suddenly appears, played by Ariana DeBose, and smashes the music box, breaking the mind control spell. Our heroes transmit the file, blow up division headquarters, and all is right in the world again. Later, Ellie even gets to return to her career as a writer. But at a book signing event for the release of her successful book 5, Ellie meets a man who looks surprisingly exactly like the fictional Agent Argylle.
This movie can suck my fucking dick.
Getting so mad again.
You were reading the synopsis and I was just shaking my head like, let's start with something nice though. The smoke grenade fight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it,
okay,
but I know it's not cool to admit this, but I do like some Snow Patrol. And this song is one of my faves from them, Run. And it's a cover of it, of course. It's like a piano cover with a female singer, but it's well done. And I liked it. And it wasn't that fucking Beatles song. So I was like, cool. I was half expecting the Beatles song to start playing. And when it didn't, I was like, okay.
I'm glad you found something nice to say. I don't know Snow Patrol really or that song. To me, it was just another action dance sequence. This one was much more dancey than the prior fight scenes.
I would describe Snow Patrol as like people who feel like Coldplay is a little too edgy.
Okay.
Maybe a little threatening, need something a little safer. They go for Snow Patrol. But that being said, I like some Snow Patrol songs and I'm not going to apologize for that.
No, you shouldn't. That's nice. I still think that this scene was maybe the best thing this movie has to offer, which is a meager set of offerings, which is funny because we're about to talk about another fight scene, which comes seconds after the scene, which has an even bigger, dumber premise to it. But this one is like quite evocative of Harley Quinn's smoke grenade attack on the police station from a movie we covered, Birds of Prey.
Better movie, better scene.
Yeah, I watched it again to remind myself. The Birds of Prey scene is less elaborate, it's shorter, but it's more thrilling and it's funnier and actually looks better too. Like this scene has so much colorful smoke in it and it's because it knows it's trying to be goofy. I feel like they told the CGI people just get it done. It doesn't have to look real. So it's like a dance fight and they're doing all this choreography and they're making colored hearts out of the colored smoke. And it's, it's a love scene dance where they kill a lot of people, but it doesn't look that good. My only real relief from it was at this point, I know what the scene is doing. It's just making a long joke. So I don't have to actually pay attention to what's happening in the scene.
It's such a long joke though. And like, that's my issue with a lot of these action scenes is that you're trying so hard to be funny. There's no danger. You're not going to shoot one of your main characters in a scene where they're doing the whirlybird with colored smoke grenades. Why should I give a shit? Nothing is going to happen in this scene that matters one way or another.
No, certainly not.
So what the fuck? Why does it have to be 8 minutes long?
Yeah, it was 8 minutes long. They did the whirlybird a third time.
I think they did it 4 times because I think she does it on Aiden's shoulders first, but then later they reverse it and he goes up on her shoulders.
This scene, it's gender swapped.
I thought they did it both ways in this scene.
They might have done it twice. I might have missed one in all the smoke. It's very hard to see through the clouds of very colorful smoke. I've never seen smoke in those bright shades before.
But this fight scene is like the Children of Men single shot through downtown London compared to the next fucking fight scene we get.
Oil skating. Time to put on your oil skates, as you do.
A throwback to 80s action movies like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon is what this guy said. And then our main character steps on a couple knives with her combat boots because they had to throw in a scene of Bryce Dallas Howard angrily throwing off her heels because that was criticism of Jurassic World was that she was running around in heels.
Okay.
Which, sure.
Criticism solved.
And then, first of all, that's not how oil works.
No. To be fair, I think it's concrete skating. The oil is there to make the bad guys slippery so they can't stand up, but she's really knife skating on concrete.
That also doesn't work. And she's stabbing and like they're not allowed to shoot because the crude oil would go up in flames. But then she does some some kind of fucking pirouette and fires like 150 shots from a machine gun in a 2-second span and nothing happens.
Yeah, but as with our other difficult points, they did explain that one away because Bryan Cranston said it was okay. There's a moment just before she does that where
he doesn't say it's nothing bad's going to happen. He said he doesn't care if something bad happens.
He said all safety protocols off, fire at will, and they don't fire, she fires, and nothing happens because they're the good guys.
Go fuck yourself.
Yeah, they could have. Why not spark a fire that at least chased them out of the room at the end of the scene to show that, like,
right,
reality has consequences? I don't know. They were done with that.
Like, why can't the tanker burn down while they're fighting up on the, what would you call it, the brig?
The bridge?
Not the bridge. Yeah, like
the poop deck. It might have been the poop deck.
This whole fucking movie's a poop deck.
I'm supposed to be the nautical expert, but I'm just guessing here.
But you're just wearing a regular sweater tonight, not a cable knit one.
I didn't bust out the cables.
I dislike the scene, if you couldn't tell.
It's silly. It's full-on figure skating. It's absolutely absurd. And if you were into these characters in this movie, it would be a really joyful, silly, like, high point, but it's kind of just not.
I wouldn't describe it as joyful. I would describe it as silly. Certainly not a high point. And then we go right from this into they kill Director Ritter after this, right?
Yes, very quickly dispatch.
Alfie the cat mauls him in a very CGI manner.
Everything that cat does is very CGI. Even when there's a real cat on screen, which is for a few of the more basic moments, you're like, it still looks fake.
Yeah.
This cat has no real identity.
I think there's like a lot stricter rules about animals in movies nowadays. So like every animal in a movie is CGI now.
I see. That makes sense. It's
yeah.
better.
Keep the animals safe. It's important. It sounded sarcastic. It wasn't.
No,
I feel like everything I say sounds sarcastic tonight because I'm angry.
You're just like, fuck the cats. No, wait. I love the cats.
I love cats. Yeah. But then we go, so that's a slight break from these kind of tiresome action scenes, but then we go right into another one and we've got a hand-to-hand fight scene, which is a little more intimate. So I give it some leeway for that. I didn't love the mind control aspect of it, but it kind of had to happen.
It's silly. And again, they're playing it silly. Like, it's an old tired trope. The mom shows up there and she starts the little figure skater music box. And like the moment it stops, Ellie snaps out of it and she has to quickly, wind the spring again and get it going and the fight resumes.
That was a moment that I might have chuckled at.
You might have chuckled. Okay. I'm glad I got you to admit that. It's still, again, like the other fights. This is the third fight in a row and it's drawn out as hell. I'm like all these things. And this one, has the extra device that they're trying to upload a file, which uploading files is notoriously slow in spy movies.
Everyone's Wi-Fi is terrible.
So that adds to the frustration. And for me, it was just like watching the two stunt doubles go at it. And, when I looked at it again, there's plenty of their actual faces on screen. So it's not a valid criticism of Matthew Vaughn that like he didn't show the actors' faces, but it just had the vibe of like, okay, now we're going to watch the two stunt doubles slug it out on the deck of the ship.
All, of course, set to the wonderful new Beatles record, Now and Then.
AI assisted to extract John's voice so that it could come out crystal clear the way he intended it, I'm sure.
I'll tell you, if AI is good for anything, the stem separation is one of its better applications.
That's true. You and I are fans of that, and we have made use of that unironically and cannot pretend to be opponents of that usage of the technology, which that's not the kind of AI we associate with AI. It's not generating ideas out of other people's ideas. It's just using a lot of computing power to separate the various wavelengths and amplitudes of a voice, for instance, from a background track.
Yeah, sometimes they can even get like drums from guitars.
It's kind of amazing how it works. The living Beatles used it to good advantage, and then their representatives used it to good advantage in the construction of this film because the main characters say that's their song. Like that's the song that they go, oh, that's our song when it's playing at the keeper's hideout, and then it comes back. It's the song. In this version of the world, somebody has put this brand new old Beatles song into a music box, an old wind-up porcelain music box with a figure skater on it. Like, who would do that? And then they play the actual song, and then it's woven into the score where these soaring string sections and horns play the same melody. And it's like, it becomes obvious that it's overdone for commercial reasons outside of the story of the movie.
I got my daughter a music box that just plays a beautiful version of I Am the Walrus. So it's not true because that would be an insane thing to do. This is also like the 8th time you've heard this song in this movie by now, and I'm sick of it.
Beatles have some good songs. I know that's a hot take.
Hot take.
This is pretty far down the list.
Yeah. It was unreleased for a reason. I don't even know what to make of this final quote unquote twist at the book signing.
Henry Cavill's there. How did that happen?
But he's like a yokel. That's still an okay thing to say, to call someone?
I hope so. I like that word. Let's hope
so.
It's not offensive to anybody. He's got a curly mullet and a southern accent.
But Ellie is obviously shocked to see him because he looks just like the secret agent she sees when she's watching somebody else fight. But he also seems to know that he looks like the secret agent she sees in her brain, which begs the question, like, how would he know that? Even if she described him to a T in the book, he doesn't look like that because his haircut's different. It doesn't make any sense.
No.
What are we supposed to take from this?
No, it throws us into a whole other kind of fantasy world where her actual visions in her mind can become reality, which is not at all what's in the story up to that point.
Right. The movie did not earn that twist.
It's kind of a fuck you from Matthew Vaughn. Like, oh, and by the way, I can do whatever the fuck I want to just confuse you with the most unsolvable twist possible. Like, doesn't even make sense. And you'll have to come check out the next movie if you want to find out. And it's like, well, I don't want to find out.
So they're teasing an Argylle sequel there. And then they're teasing an Argylle prequel in the end credit scene because we meet a young Argylle who goes to a bar from the Kingsman movie. I don't really remember how it ties in, but I just know it confirms it's part of the Kingsman universe.
Yeah, but that young Argylle doesn't have a Southern American accent. He has the expected British accent. So that's not the guy, and it's not Rachel, and it's not Aiden. So who the fuck is that?
Just the absolute balls and hubris of Matthew Vaughn to make one movie and tease not only a sequel to it, but a prequel to it. You're so fucking concerned about making a franchise, you forgot to make a movie.
You and I both came to that as our master theories of this movie, that it's hubris. They overestimated Henry Cavill when he should have been a stunt casting in a bit part, and they put him front and center on the poster, mismarketed it for that reason. Matthew Vaughn got all excited about what he was doing with him, and he ended up doing dumb stuff. Vaughn overestimated his own appeal, that like he could weave this into the Kingsman universe and his loyal legions of fans would just come flocking. Like that would be some incredible asset. And then the craziest part is they overestimated Ellie Conway and her books. They put out a fake book, and just the way they started thinking that, oh, well, because we're making a movie about a best-selling author, that'll have a built-in fan base for Ellie Conway. And it's like, they forgot she doesn't exist.
You just made her up.
Just made her up. That's not real. But yet they treat the movie, it's hard to put my finger on, but something about the attitude of the movie is, you're here for this Ellie Conway shit because we know you're one of those crazy fans that we show in the book signing. And so you're just going to revel in it, and we're just going to lead you on with it. But it's like, we're not here for this. You have to earn something. And they didn't earn very much.
Matthew Vaughn literally said when he was pitching this movie, RIP to everyone killed by the gods for their hubris, but I'm different and better, maybe even better than the gods. But yeah, I think there's a lot of misjudging the appetite of the audience, like you said, not only just for Cavill, for Ellie Conway, because you can't do that. I can't be like, I'm making a new music biopic about a guy I just made up named Scott. Like,
right.
And we're going to put out a single from him. And it's like, no one gives a shit. That's a fake person. You got to get John C. Reilly to make a whole soundtrack. And then it's a whole thing.
Walk Hard was the closest to actually doing this ridiculous thing that you're saying, because John C. Reilly was so good and the songs were so good that it almost...
The songs were... I still listen to that soundtrack.
They almost pulled it off, even though they didn't have that hubris going in that they thought they were gifting the world with a real artist when it was a made-up phony.
Give him a minute, son. Matthew Vaughn needs to think about his entire life before he directs an action scene with a CGI cat. I think there's also a misestimation for the public's appetite for the Kingsman. You know, the Kingsman, which confusing title, but is the sequel or the prequel to the Kingsman series, was a flop. So the last entry into this, it was $100 million budget, made $126 million.
Okay.
That's not a good return. The first movie made $400 million on a $95 million budget. Good return.
Yeah.
I think the Golden Circle did pretty good. Golden Circle was a little bigger budget, $105 million. Same return. Now your ratios are shifting a little. And then the prequel just fell off a cliff. So people weren't exactly clamoring. And the Golden Circle came out in 2017. We're 7 years removed by the time this movie comes out from a successful Kingsman movie.
That's unfortunately, I think, part of the dysfunction of Hollywood, that movies and projects just take forever. And the people involved, I think they have to sort of pump themselves and each other up with, you know, the reason that you're getting this job is because the last thing you did was good. So even if it's 7 years later, you still have to like pretend that you're coasting on that. Because if the filmmaker stops pretending that they're coasting on that, then the studio might wake up and go, wait, what are we coasting on? There's nothing here, you know, like the whole idea idea might evaporate.
Coasting on vibes, like so much crude oil on the floor of a tanker.
But that being said, there's enough fans of Vaughn's style and all the people in this movie and the genre that if it was just written better, executed better, edited tightly, it could have been a modest success. There's nothing inherently stinky and wrong with this concept or the shape of the story and the characters. It was just all the hands were overplayed. Everything had small little mistakes that felt sloppy and entitled, and it leads to giving you a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah. Do you want to see what Vaughn's got planned for the future?
I'm very curious to hear that, yes.
All right. First little catch up, not the condiment. He did reveal that a third Kick-Ass movie has actually already been filmed. It was filmed in secret. He's not directing it. He also sat out the sequel. He only directed the first one, but he was a producer on the second.
Okay.
And he's a producer on this one. Stuntman Darren Walters was the director.
Interesting.
But yeah, it filmed in 2024. I guess it's done. And he's got a third Kingsman movie, a second Kingsman movie,
Ooh.
and a top secret project called Courage, all in some form of production or pre-production. I think Courage is the one he's currently filming. I don't know what order the Kingsman 3 and the Kingsman 2 are going in, but he's not walking away from that franchise anytime soon.
He's doing a lot of stuff. I just have to hope that he hits with one of these. Like, he might be a hit and miss director, but I'm hoping he gets another hit. Like, when things click for him, it can be pretty fun. And I'm going to keep up some optimism that we'll enjoy some more fun from him in the future.
I was harsh on him, but I did want to give him some praise for X-Men First Class, which I think is a really solid entry into the X-Men film franchise.
Yeah, I forgot that he did that.
Yeah, that's a good movie. Jason Fuchs, he's the writer, also an actor. As an actor, he's been in stuff like La La Land, It Chapter 2, and he's also the moderator at the book reading in this.
Oh, okay. That's fun.
As a writer, he's written Ice Age Continental Drift, Pan, stay tuned for that one, and Wonder Woman, which is his calling card. And he's also the co-creator and co-showrunner of the upcoming It prequel series, Welcome to Derry.
Ooh, that sounds fun. I didn't know they were making that.
Yeah, I think some of the best parts of the book are when Mike Hanlon is talking to old residents of Derry and they're recounting run-ins with Pennywise that have happened like over the centuries, really. And I think that's what a lot of the show is going to tap into. So I think that could, and Bill Skarsgård is coming back to be Pennywise. I thought he was great as Pennywise.
Oh, that's neat.
The second movie was hot dog shit, but the first one was pretty great. So hopefully they get it back on track. Bryce Dallas Howard, let's see what she's been doing. So she seems to be done with the Jurassic World series because they're moving on to the new cast and new creative team for that. That's the one Gareth Edwards is taking over, and Scarlett Johansson will be starring in, to be released this summer, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Your boy will be there. Love me some dinosaurs and love me some Gareth.
That's true. That's a good combo.
Yeah. When somebody asked me, who would you want to direct the next Jurassic World movie? I was like, Gareth Edwards.
Yeah, so that'll be fun.
I'm pretty hyped for that. But so Bryce Dallas Howard, she's done with the Jurassic movies, but she's popped up in other stuff like Rocket Man with Taron Egerton.
Oh, okay.
The Kingsman movies. Witch Mountain, and she's also the voice of Yaddle, Yoda's lady friend in Star Wars, Tales of the Jedi.
Wow. Okay.
Not baby Yoda, but Lady Yoda.
Right. Yoda and Yaddle, famous couple.
But she's also been directing a lot, especially in the Star Wars Disney Plus series universes. She's directed episodes of The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and Skeleton Crew.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Following her dad's footsteps.
Yeah, especially, her dad also made a Star Wars movie we talked about. She'll next be starring in Deep Cover, which I think is going to be an action comedy with Sean Bean, or Sean Bean, as I like to call him, Ian McShane, and Orlando Bloom. What a cast.
Really great until you got to the end there. Sorry, Orlando.
Sorry, Orlando. He's the male Keira Knightley, though. Like, it's always weird seeing him in contemporary roles.
That's true.
Because he played like a pirate or an elf or a crusader for his first 10 movies. It's about an improv troupe going undercover in London.
Weird.
It's one thing I always want. I said, I want more improv troupes in my life. So thank you. She's also going to be directing a remake of Flight of the Navigator. I don't know if you are familiar with the original. It's a movie from the late 80s, I want to say.
Is that an animated movie?
I think so. I don't know.
Is it related to The Rescuers, or are those two different things?
You're throwing a lot of questions at me right now, and I'm not liking it.
I got questions, all of which are totally irrelevant, except they're important to Bryce Dallas Howard right now. She needs to know what she's directing, but we don't.
It is not a animated movie. It was one of the first Hollywood films to use extensive CGI, though.
Oh.
It's a 1986 science fiction action adventure film directed by Randall Kleiser about a 12-year-old boy who is abducted by an alien spaceship.
In the poster, he looks exactly like Elliot from E.T., but it's not. It's like they cast a wannabe Elliot.
Yeah, and he time travels. He goes from 1978 to 1986. Cool.
That's as far as he goes?
Yeah. So Cavill, he's also done with his big franchises. He's done with The Witcher.
Okay.
He will no longer be witching. Liam Hemsworth is taking over that role for him.
Oh, really?
He apparently so he's a big fan of The Witcher IP, the books, the video games. And I guess he had some issues with creative changes that the team was making to the character and the storylines.
Oh, so he decided decided to part ways.
Yeah, I think he might have had it built into his contract that he had. If you guys stray too far from the original story, I'm going to bail. And it's gotten him like a lot of positive attention from like the manosphere, which is unfortunate because they're like, he's leaving because they're making it woke.
Shit.
I think he just is a fan of the books. I sure hope. I don't know. But he's also done with the DC universe. He's no longer Superman.
Right.
We got a new Superman coming.
He's about to drop.
He did. Did you see him? He landed in the snow.
Okay.
Oh, you don't watch trailers. That's right. You haven't seen the trailer for Superman. It looks pretty good.
I saw part of it. Does his dog come and help him out?
Yeah. Cute little super dog. I'm excited for that one, but he won't be in it. But he's also been starring with Millie Bobby Brown in the Enola Holmes series as Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, okay.
And there's another one of those on the way. He's made occasional appearances in Guy Ritchie movies like The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which I haven't seen yet. I'd mean to check that out. He also had a memorable cameo in Deadpool and Wolverine. Did you ever check out Deadpool and Wolverine?
I did. And I kind of enjoyed it. But now that you said that, I don't remember him in it.
He's a little Wolverine. He's like the comics accurate Wolverine. That's 5'3".
Oh, did I clock him and just forget that? I don't even know.
That was like the big, everyone was like, oh, if Hugh Jackman's going to retire, let Henry Cavill be Wolverine. I was like, no, represent for the short kings.
Yeah.
Wolverine's a short king. We need some representation there.
That's the way to do it.
Get fucking, I don't know, who's a short actor? I can't even think of.
Most of them, frankly.
Yeah, right? Get Matt Bomer in there.
Okay.
Tiny little. I only called him out because I met him once. He was tiny.
Oh, okay.
Not even that short. He's just very like slight. But so Cavill has 7 projects in production as well. Like I mentioned, third Enola Holmes movie, a Highlander reboot. I assume he's playing the Christopher Lambert role because he looks like him with long hair.
I could totally see him in that.
And he's got a new Guy Ritchie movie, In the Gray, with Eiza Gonzalez, who I'm very fond of, and Jake Gyllenhaal. So they're reuniting from Ambulance.
That's right.
Quite the squad. Rockwell's been a little under the radar lately. He's done a lot of voice roles. He was in F is for Family, which I think, was that Bill Burr's show for
I think
Netflix?
So. That sounds familiar. I didn't watch it.
Adult animation is weird to me.
Yeah.
The Bad Guys, which is an animated movie, and my son's a big fan of the books, so we've been meaning to watch the movie, and it's got a sequel coming up. And If, which was that Ryan Reynolds bomb that we almost had to cover this month.
Ooh, I heard about that one.
And Krasinski. But he'll be back in a big way soon. He's got 8 upcoming projects, including Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die from Gore Verbinski, which sounds like it's going to be really cool.
Interesting.
The Heart from Nat Faxon and Jim Rash. Jim Rash, of course, the dean from Community, and also quite a prolific writer in his own right. I think he won an Oscar for the Descendants script.
Oh, wow.
With Clooney. And a guy walks into a bar, which he'll be co-starring in with Kumail Nanjiani.
Neat.
Yeah, so he's got some cool stuff on the horizon.
That sounds entertaining.
Speaking of cool stuff on the horizon, do you want to hear what we've got on the horizon? It's not cool.
It's not cool at all. Once again, I have watched the movie that we are going to do next. We're going to wrap up our January retrospective.
We are wrapping it up finally with Madam Web. We had to do it.
We'll finally answer the question, which movie is more gonzo nutballs, Megalopolis or Madam Web? Going to be close.
An interesting about Dakota Johnson, I don't know if people realize this, but she was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
Oh my gosh.
It's pretty crazy, right? I love that the line's not even in the movie.
It's not in the movie. She recorded it for the trailer, clearly, or at some other point in their infinite ADR sessions, which they obviously did. And then she denied saying it, or she denied understanding that there was anything stilted about that line.
She had a press tour for the ages promoting this movie. She clearly was not happy.
I'm going to watch some clips because that's definitely key to understanding this character, this very nuanced and weird ass character. And I can't separate Dakota Johnson from her characters. And maybe that's who she is, but that's going to be something to dive into in our next episode.
So we're going to have to divert some funds from emergency services, firefighters, things of that nature, because we're going to have to pay out a lot of overtime to the ADR Patrol.
Yeah.
ADR Patrol is going to be working overtime next week for this fucking movie.
Double shifts, coming in on their days off.
It's going to be something, man. But then we're done. We can do some good movies for a change. We've got some fun, good movies planned. Thank God.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. You can subscribe, rate, review the podcast if you can.
Give it a shot.
We would appreciate it.
We love that.
Like I mentioned, we are having a mailbag episode, so feel free to send in your questions to blastzonepod@gmail.com or DM us on Blue Sky or Twitter. Our DMs should be open on both, and we'll put your questions in the episode if they're not silly, even if they are sometimes.
We might put a silly question or two on there.
I've already got a couple silly questions, mainly about your nautical behavior.
That's why we say blast me anything, including nautical topics. Nothing is out of bounds.
Nothing's overboard.
Oh, it's starting. Zaniness is already starting.
I'm loopy from hating on this movie for 2 hours.
It takes a toll.
Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.